What's up, Open Floor Globe? I'm your host, Michael the Pod Pina, and I'm joined on the other line by my good friend, Sports Illustrated staff writer Rohan Nadkarni. Rohan, this is more or less an NBA podcast when we really lock in to make it one. Mm-hmm. But can I confess something to you right here, right now?
Please, I would love to. Love for you to do that.
I have not watched any preseason games. I've sat through highlights. I've checked in with some stars to see how they're doing. I've perused statistical leaderboards, and I've watched every Jordan Poole minute because he's the next Michael Jordan. But I have not sat through a basketball game that doesn't count yet. I'm extremely excited for the season to start, but I just can't do the preseason. I know this is a safe space. Can you relate to me right now?
Mike, listen, welcome to my world, baby. You already know how I feel about Summer League. You already know how I feel about Summer League. Preseason is not far removed from it. And let me tell you something. There's nothing I dislike more than NBA writers complaining about the preseason. You know, shout out to my guy Mike Singer in Denver, who's complaining about the Nuggets going to overtime in a preseason game Thursday night. And I'm like, Mike, you're enabling the existence of this by covering this game, okay? I think all NBA writers need to just start blacking out the preseason, stop paying attention to it. The players don't care. The players don't play. Shout out to my guy Jovan, who covers the Lakers for The Athletic out here in LA. But I see Jovan, tweeting AD stats after the first quarter and, like Malik Monk looks great tonight. And I'm like, listen, man, none of this matters. It especially doesn't matter for the good teams. Guess what? Nothing the Lakers do right now will matter. Heck, what the Lakers do in the regular season might not matter. It might not matter what the Lakers do until the last 4 minutes of their first playoff game. So I just need everyone to cool it. I need everyone to stop enabling the existence of the preseason by continuing to take it seriously. I'm seeing writers tweet out rotations and strategic adjustments, and I'm just like, why are we doing this? Why are any of us doing this? We all know it doesn't matter.
Well, I think the Lakers are 0-6, I want to say. So obviously that just portends to just a complete devastation season from them. So I will say that is meaningful. To me, like I'm just enjoying my October. I'm watching horror movies. I'm reading this novel called Reprieve, which is a horror novel. It's great. I recommend it. What is your favorite horror? I know you're a horror buff too, and I don't want to get too sidetracked, but do you have a favorite horror film, a favorite horror like subgenre, Rohan?
So, Mike, I'm actually really, really glad that you brought this up because I am also enjoying my October. The season's about to start. I took a little bit of a vacation this last week just to get ahead of the season a little bit. And I saw 2 movies this week. First of all, it's just really exciting to be back in the theater. I don't even mind being in there with my mask on. It's all good. I saw No Time to Die, the final film of the Daniel Craig James Bond era.
What's that, like 4 hours long?
2 hours and 43 minutes. And let me tell you something, worth it. For me, at least. I had a good time. It's not a perfect movie, but it was a lot of fun. Okay. But I also saw a French film, and it's a body horror movie called Titan.
Okay, so before you go any further, do not spoil. I'm Frank Costanza right now. I want to go in fresh.
Okay.
What did this won the Best Picture, the Palme d'Or? Is that what it's called?
Yes, that's right. And Titan was really interesting. I'm already forgetting the director's name. It's a French woman, Julia. Oh God, I don't remember her last name, and I don't speak French. But she also directed another body horror movie called Raw that came out in 2016.
I've seen Raw.
Raw is one of the best movies I think I've seen in the last 10 years. And that's probably my favorite horror movie, if you want to call it a horror movie. I think Raw is spectacular. I would suggest to everyone to watch Raw knowing nothing about it, but it is going to gross you out on a deeply, deeply uncomfortable level. And I had high hopes for Titan based off Raw. And based on my love for that movie, I found this one a little bit disappointing, but I think it's a really, really interesting movie and worth watching on a lot of levels. But, I'm glad you brought that up because I think Raw is probably maybe my favorite horror movie. And Mike, you got to see 210 if you haven't seen it yet. I'm sure we have some open floor Globe members who maybe have caught it or are as up to the international cinema, probably more so than we are. But yeah, man, I'm enjoying my October too. I think it's fair to say this has been one of the more draining NBA off seasons with some of the storylines going on. So I think it's good for both of us to escape a little bit.
It is. I'm looking forward to Halloween Kills. Dropped today on Peacock. I'm old school. Michael Myers, shout out to him forever. Never leave my life, Michael.
They brought back like the OG cast for that series too. They're doing some good work there.
Incredible stuff. So yeah, you just kind of hit the nail on the head right there. Like the offseason has been a little bit draining, but the actual basketball starts next week. And on today's episode, this is basically our last. We're going to open up the mailbag again, of course. And it's the last time we're going to be doing that during the off season, which is awesome. And special thanks to everyone who carried this show. And I do not say that hyperbolically. You guys are clearly the stars of Open Floor, the Open Floor Globe. All your emails that have come in, all your questions have just been so terrific and titillating. And I mean, Rohan, you text me when I send you the outline and you're just impressed. Your jaw hits the floor with some of the questions that we
get excited. I get excited when you send me the outlines for the show, Mike, and it's been awesome to see all the questions. We love them. And I think it's fair to say that obviously the season's starting. We're going to have plenty to talk about, but that doesn't mean we want any less questions coming in. We absolutely want to continue to involve the Open Floor Globe because it's been a ton of fun answering the questions.
Of course. So keep them coming in. Openfloormail@gmail.com. Openfloormail@gmail.com. Let's kick things off today with a letter from Tim, who writes, I have been a listener of the podcast since early last season, but have never written in before. So you'd think what inspired me to finally take the plunge would be something big, i.e., Kyrie deciding the Nets status as overwhelming title favorites was way too blasé and deciding to single-handedly blow it all up. Instead, my question is, are there any basketball coaching trends/strategies that have become ubiquitous in today's NBA that you personally deplore? Alternately, are there any coaching moves that are considered controversial or unpopular that you guys might be inclined to defend? Thanks, and keep up the good work. If you're ever somehow bored/in need of airtime, a fun debate my friend and I had the other day was, if you were forced to pick one cuisine, and only that cuisine, to eat for the rest of your life, which would it be? Take it easy and stay safe. This was a terrific email from Tim. Tim, I know that's your first time. Please don't be a stranger. If you're going to come with the fastball like that, please send Tim, as many as possible.
You smashed it, bruv.
So real quick, the cuisine question.
A classic.
It's always Italian for me. I just go Italian. I'll die in 8 years. I don't care. There's so many great options. I never get sick of Italian food. My mother's Italian. And I had spaghetti like 7 times a week growing up. So it's Italian for me. Easily.
Italian's a good one. I feel like it's too easy for me to go Indian. So I'm going to go subgenre and I'm going to go Indian Chinese food. If I had to pick one for the rest of my life, it would be Indian Chinese food.
Wait, you need to, are you cheating or is that an actual, I'm confused right now.
No. It's an actual style of food and it's very difficult to find stateside. I got to say, there's some Indian restaurants that will sell some Indian Chinese items, but it's hard to find one that's dedicated fully to Indian Chinese, but that's actually genuinely my favorite kind of food.
What is your favorite Indian Chinese dish?
It's got to be gobi Manchurian. It's a cauliflower dish. You either get it dry or with gravy. That's how you know you're at a real Indian Chinese spot, if they offer it to you dry or with gravy. Yeah, gobi Manchurian's up there. I mean, the fried rice. Yeah.
Incredible. So let's talk basketball. How about?
Please.
We're like 10 minutes into this podcast, and I don't think we've really mentioned anything. My answer to this question is First of all, I thought that this question was great. I thought it was also
Hmm.
very difficult to answer because the NBA is so ubiquitous from a
Hmm.
stylistic perspective as it is, and I'm not saying that as a criticism, but it's like it's a pick and roll league, it's
Yeah.
a transition league. I think because of that, coaches are as interchangeable as ever, or coaches are valued for, you know, how they relate to young stars and just how they are able to motivate their teams, which I guess coaches have always had to do that. But right now, like, I'm not saying that Monty Williams isn't a genius tactician because I think he's really bright, but a lot of his value is just like motivating DeAndre Ayton during
Hmm.
timeouts. You know what I mean? And so I think that it's a little tricky to kind of to answer this one, but I will say I wish every coach treated most nights, not all, because it's impossible, but most nights like Ty Lue treats the playoffs, where you change your rotation, you change your starting lineup game to game based on matchups. You tinker and tinker and tinker, and you mix and match coverages. Obviously, again, you can't do this so much because players are human beings and they can't process information and adapt that quickly, and they're really they love their routines.
Yeah.
But I
It's
wish we had
difficult.
more. Yeah, I wish we had more fluctuation than we do. That would be my one thing that kind of bugs me a little bit about the regular season.
Yeah, Mike, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's the ubiquity of the game. It's the fact that the last 4 minutes of a playoff game look the same for almost every team, and that you're putting the ball in your best player's hands. You're asking them to run a pick and roll, and they're either getting a switch or you're basically seeing if the defense can hold up, in their chosen defensive style. And now it's also most defenses are going to switch at the end of games, etc. So I think you hit the nail on the head. It almost has to come from the ubiquity because of how similar teams are being run. If so, I just looked at it as like, what's my like kind of pet peeve with the game right now?
Uh huh.
And I think my biggest pet peeve, the one thing I would change, and this goes along the lines of what you said, and it's coaches not starting their best 5 man lineup. And I feel like so often we always talk about what lineups we're excited to see teams play in the playoffs and what we think their closing lineup is going to be and what we think
So
their best five guys are. And it's almost never the five players to start.
so
And even the Warriors would do this in 2016 when they started Andrew Bogut, right? When they had something called the death lineup, or we saw the
right.
Lakers do this every time they don't start Anthony Davis at center. So that to me has always been my pet peeve when coaches just don't play their best five guys to start the game.
I was gonna say the number one. All those lineups that you said are probably more famous or more well documented than this one, but the Miami Heat 2 years ago, not starting Bam Adebayo at the five until the bubble started, and then they go to the finals. I don't think that was a coincidence. Shout out to
Yeah.
Myers Leonard, who's out of the NBA right now for a lot of reasons. Um, so yeah, no, I agree with you, and that's actually something that I wrote down here too as kind of an honorable mention response. Just like, we know where the league is. We know that the league is positionless. Just like, start small. It's okay. I understand the value of rebounding. I understand the value of rim protection. And not a lot of teams, not every team, I should say, can go small all the time.
Hmm.
But if that's where you go when like it's money time, why not start that way? Sometimes
It's
I'm kind of
just
like,
funny. It's just funny. It's like coaches start every game with some kind of weird staring contest. And then all of a sudden somebody's like, okay, like enough of this farce. Like we're gonna play the good players now. And then they take their center off the floor. And it just is silly. It's silly. That's why I think maybe one of my favorite playoff series of all time that doesn't get talked about as much as it should just because it wasn't a final series. But the Chris Paul Rockets, the first time they went up against the KD Warriors, and by the end of that series, both teams were starting small and playing all their guys almost 45 minutes a night. And to me, that was like the purest distillation of playoff basketball. It was two teams playing five and a half, 6 man rotations, and everyone's playing almost the entire game. That was awesome.
yeah, that's a great call. That's a great series. Man, I still get a little upset. I was so
Yeah.
high on the Rockets that season. Bummer, but. Better team won.
Yeah.
We have an email now from Elliot.
Oh, wait. Actually, can I, I wanted to hop in on the other end of Tim's question there, actually.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my bad.
Which was, no, that's okay. Which was a coaching trend that I disagree with. And let me offer the caveat first that I completely understand why, from an efficiency perspective, coaches don't do this. But I would just like to throw out that it makes me genuinely sad how much the league has gotten away from players playing in the post. I love Joel Embiid. I grew up in an era where Alonzo Mourning was on the Heat. Shaquille O'Neal was dominating the finals. And it was like being a center was cool. I loved it when guys would get the ball thrown at them in the post. I love Dwayne Wade, famously early in his career, was one of the guards who would operate out of the post. And I love when guys have a post game, and it's just sad that you don't get to see it anymore. It did reach a point of annoyance for me when Sean Livingston would come to the game for the Warriors and just start posting up smaller guards. And I was like, okay, I've seen enough of this. We get it. You'd think somebody
single 8-footer.
Yes. But yeah, I miss post play, and it's fewer and further between the guys who get the ball thrown at them in the block.
Post play is, that's obviously an ongoing trend here in the league. The Nets basically posted the ball up. The Nets, the most efficient offense in NBA history last season, had 6 post-ups all year.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes I think about, and I've been thinking about doing a story on this, but it's just, I don't know how to kind of worm my way in. But post defense in the playoffs when you're switching is so important, because especially for the guys who get hunted, and how do you teach post defense? And do you teach post defense? Do teams work on that? It's just something I think about sometimes especially in the playoffs, but you don't really see that too much during the regular season.
I mean, something I think about a lot, and I think Zion's bringing this back, but just kind of the death of the power forward. The guys who, again, growing up, Antonio McDyess, he'd be a center now. Udonis Haslem would be a center now.
These are
Zach Randolph would have been a center. But I loved those kinds of players growing up. I mean, even Kevin Garnett was a power forward for most of his career, which is crazy to think about. And yeah, I understand that the offenses are so much better now, but I do miss that era of basketball to a degree. And just seeing every, good offense basically get rid of their post game makes me sad, at least, even if it's not as efficient.
We could talk about this forever. I have a theory that one of the reasons why that type of player has gotten kind of pushed out of the league is the league doesn't need, or there's really no value in a strong man, a tough guy, a Charles Oakley.
Because, a Reggie Evans.
Yeah, there's just no need for it because how the game is officiated and what you get fined for now versus maybe what you got fined for 15, 20 years ago. And it's obviously just a more skill-based game now, which is great. That's more aesthetically pleasing, don't get me wrong. But yeah, no, there are a few dinosaurs from back in the day who I do miss as well. So that's a great point. Okay, so
yeah, I'm just emailing the league office all kinds of things. You guys are anti-basketball. The game's gone soft.
Yes. Yeah. Send those emails in to
from my work address. Yeah.
Adam Silver definitely wants to hear that. Okay, so Elliot is probably just sitting there. He's probably fast forwarded through the past 30 seconds of conversation once I said his name. But Elliot writes in, is there precedent in the NBA for a move as widely criticized as the Lakers trading for Westbrook and then having it actually work? Or given the level of criticism, we should all know it will fail. Elliot then cites Chris Paul going to Houston a few years ago, which you just brought up, Rohan. And a lot of people wondering if there was enough, there's only one ball I always thought that was a really stupid way to look at it, but that was a thing that a lot of people said before it happened, and lo and behold, they should have won the title that year if Chris Paul did not get hurt. So obviously that was a success for them. This was a fun one, and the first. I also had like a difficult time kind of coming up with a bunch, but the first example that I had was also Chris Paul, but Chris Paul to Phoenix, coming from OKC. I recall when that trade went down, people were like, so Chris Paul's contract is going to take up Phoenix's cap space for the next 2 years. I'm just like, what are you people talking about? It's like, are you watching this man play basketball? Have you watched the Phoenix Suns for the past 10 years? Who are they signing that like would be better of a value than Chris Paul right now? I understand the timelines and everything, and no one, even me, expected them to go to the finals or anything like that. But I do recall thinking like a lot of these pieces fit now. Everything comes into place. They were moving on from Ricky Rubio, who had a lot of success, but Ricky Rubio's Achilles heel is you can't really play him off ball a ton, and that was trouble with Devin Booker and Ayton and everybody. And Chris Paul is one of the better spot-up three-point shooters we've seen. So that never made a ton of sense to me at all. I was very high on that move when it happened, and it worked out swimmingly for the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, first of all, I got to say, Elliot, that's a great call about Chris Paul going to Houston because – yeah, Mike, maybe you were more confident, but I do think there was something to be said about the fact that they're both guys who play the best when they have the ball in their hands. And at that point, we weren't sure. Chris Paul put up isolation numbers his time in Houston that I don't think, as great of a player as he was, I don't think necessarily people expect him to be that great of an isolation scorer and player, et cetera. And how's it going to work when you have two guys who – are at their best when they're directing an offense, and now they have to play off of each other. And we did see, finally why that partnership ended, right? Like Harden didn't necessarily love or commit to playing off ball. It is funny that you said how that trade was worth it because it's one of the real fascinating ripple effects in the NBA right now is that Chris Paul trade and what's happened since because of how desperate Houston was to move off his contract, kind of the hilarity that's ensued since then. But I mean, this was a tough question. I don't really, to be honest, like I was racking my brain and I couldn't really come up with any answers, especially in terms of one that worked. You know what I mean? Like you bring up Chris Paul, and even that, it's like no one was really talking about it from a basketball standpoint, right? I think everyone agreed it was kind of a home run, if anything, especially coming off his OKC season in which he was spectacular. So I don't know. I to be honest, because it's like I can't think of a contender that made such a drastic move. I mean, the Heat in 2005 did that massive, 3-team trade that got them Antoine Walker, James Posey.
But then they won the title.
They won the title.
Yeah.
And so that one, kind of worked, but I don't remember it necessarily being crazy criticized. And yeah, like all the ones I can think of worked, right? Like the Lakers acquired Pau Gasol. People I think had some, maybe when the Celtics got together in 2008, people said, how is this going to work? Are they going to come together quickly enough?
Not me.
Yeah.
By the way, before you go on, I just have a bone to pick with our editor, Mark Bechtel, who put together
Bechtel.
Yes, who put together the top 75 NBA SI covers in an article that was wonderful, and everyone should go check out because SI NBA covers are my personal pastime. But the NBA preview issue for that year, the 2007-2008 season, had KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen on it, and I had it framed in my college dorm room. And that is top 10 for me. And that didn't make the top 75. And so I'm still upset about that one because it's a gorgeous cover and really aged well, I got to say.
Yeah, so did the Dwayne Wade exit interview cover I did. And that one was missing from the list too. So
no Trey and Luca looking up through a net either, which is my first cover story. I was very just Bechtel. Come on, step it up, my guy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a bone to pick to say the least. Fix was in. So yeah, I mean, I can think of more so moves that were like criticized but ended up working, I guess, instead of ones that I don't know. This question just threw me for a loop.
Can I throw one at you that we don't know if it'll work yet, but it has been heavily criticized during the offseason that I think will work?
Sure.
DeMar DeRozan to the Chicago Bulls. I think it's going to be great, and a lot of hate on that one for a variety of reasons.
I
And
think
we're going to
people are
see.
mostly just upset with how much money DeRozan got, but that's going to be an interesting.
Stay out
That's
of
going to
DeMar
be.
DeRozan's pockets. My
I
goodness.
don't disagree. I don't disagree. I always go back and forth on this because I will say, just for what it's worth, it is interesting to think about. I never have a problem with players getting paid. At the same time, like it is a capped league, and that kind of thing does come into play in some situations, etc. But I don't know. It's a weird evolving conversation. But the DeMar one's going to be interesting. You and Herring are high on the Bulls. You and Herring are high on the
We're
Bulls.
all in. We're all in. Like they
You
better
guys are,
make the be at least the seven
they're
seed.
gonna show you guys in that little like graphic at the United Center with the Bulls. Like you guys are running with the Bulls, charging into the team bus or whatever. They got to Photoshop you and Herring into that.
I'd be up for that. No one has contacted me yet, but I look forward to my photo shoot.
Just running through the streets of Chicago.
Yeah. So that was.
Read the question to me again. Read the question to me again.
You want me to read the question to
I
you
do.
again?
I do.
Okay. Is there, this comes from Elliot. I'm sorry, Elliot. We've said your name so many times. Is there precedent in the NBA for a move as widely criticized as the Lakers trading for Westbrook and then having that actually work? Or given the level of criticism, we should all know it.
Well, okay, so this is the one that came to mind because it's a reverse. It's the move that everyone loved but didn't work out.
Yes.
And that's the Lakers acquiring Steve Nash and Dwight Howard.
That
was the team that came to mind because that
Speaking of SI covers,
yeah,
yes.
That one was hilarious because it was like, well, this is going to be unfair. Nash and Dwight are going to run pick and rolls, and it's going to be unstoppable, except Dwight Howard went full Dwight, and that team never got off the ground. But that's the one that came to mind because it was a reverse of the situation.
Also, another kind of reverse, at least for me, was when Al Horford went to the Sixers.
They were talking about that on this very podcast, I believe, the old regime, and I, from the moment, thought that was, and I felt so vindicated because I thought that was an awful move, and I told Ben and Sharp as much, who I think liked the Sixers making the conference finals that year. I mean, obviously Simmons got hurt for the playoffs, but I hated that move, and I never understood why people liked it. I mean, that one never made it. You like that move?
I like that move. I mean, look, I did not expect Al Horford. Like, I got why they did it, and like all you really needed there was you needed Joel Embiid insurance, right? And Al Horford is a big who can move on the perimeter, who can pass, and who can shoot threes. So there was like he could play on paper. He could play with Joel Embiid at the same time, and then he could be the backup five the starting five when
an expensive insurance policy they picked up there.
Sure, and now the Celtics have Big Al back, and everything's going to be wonderful. Title 18 coming up. Okay, so we have an email from Liam, who is like on a Joe DiMaggio-esque streak right now with the emails, just killing it. Liam writes, before I get into my question, I wanted to tell you guys that I am trying to make my own top 100 NBA players list, and I have found that it is extremely difficult. You guys deserve a lot of respect for making these lists because it is definitely not an easy thing to do. Shout out to you, Liam, for trying. We want to see your top 100 list, by
Liam,
the way.
please send it in, buddy.
Forward it on, man.
First of all, Liam, thank you for giving us validation and respect that even many of our coworkers have not given us for putting together the top 100. Thank you for not shouting at us, for being understanding. We really appreciate it. Good luck on your list, man. Yeah, we'd love to see it. Please send it in.
Definitely. So Liam's question. Every year in the NBA, there is usually a team that surprises everyone and has a lot more success than they were predicted to have. Last year, this could have been said for the Suns, Hawks, and Knicks. With the season closing in, I've been wondering which team do you guys think can surprise everyone and make a big jump in the standings or have a lot of playoff success? So I have a lot of candidates here, but I'm gonna go with I have like a hot take candidate.
Okay.
I want to save it. I want you to tell me who you've got kind of cooking here, and then I'm gonna drop a bomb on you.
So it's interesting because I think Liam's right in the sense that there's a team that I think always makes it, not always, but often makes it further than we expected. But that's in large part due to a weird bracket shaking out or, a poorly timed injury in the playoffs, etc. That's usually, I think, when teams make kind of that real unexpected run. And that's kind of, I think, unfair to maybe tease out moving forward and being like, oh, I think this team's going to make it because this guy's going to get hurt in the playoffs, etc. And another issue I have right now is I think the top halves of each conference are so bunched together to a degree. Like Brooklyn is obviously kind of, well, now that Kyrie's gone, they're not really in their own category. I think the Bucks are right there with them.
Disagree, but you can catch my opinions on SI.com. I wrote about that earlier this week. Continue, Rohan.
Hold on. No. You think the Bucks are not in the same tier as the Nets without Kyrie?
No, I don't. Silence.
Yikes. Okay.
Nets are still ahead. Step ahead, baby. Nets got better in the offseason.
I think the Nets would be favored, but I think that would be a close series.
I will say, if Giannis, I said at the top that I have not been watching the preseason.
Well, you've seen the clips of the jump shot. Oh,
how everyone has, yeah. And if that's for real, then what are we even talking about? Like, he's just it's game over for everybody. But I have doubts because it's the preseason.
Right.
But we will see.
The problem is it's like I could say Boston could make the conference finals, but I don't think that that's a hot take in the slightest. Like, I don't think that would be a surprise. So this was another question I struggled with. I will say the Mavs are the team that made the most sense to me only because they've not been out of the first round. They have a talent in Luka. The West is in a weird spot because of the Nuggets and Clippers have their injury issues. So that was, to me, I think the team that if they made the conference finals, some people would be like, whoa, they're already here. But I think things could break right for them. So that was kind of my one that I thought fit the criteria for this question.
I'm honestly just disappointed in you. I gotta say.
Really?
Come on, man. The Mavs. Give me a heavy hitter. Give me. No one thought the Knicks were going to be good. I thought the Hawks were going to be okay because they signed Bogey, they signed Gallo, etc. I was not expecting an Eastern Conference Finals run. And we already kind of covered the Suns, which were a surprise, but I guess you could see it coming because they added CP a little bit, particularly during the regular season.
I mean, I was high on the Suns. I
know. Yeah, I know you were. So the Mavs are your team for this question, the team that's going to shock the world.
I mean, it's not going to be the Bulls. It's not going to be the Wolves. It's not going to be the Cavs.
Wait, can you circle back for 2 seconds? This was not my team, but the Timberwolves. They're an honorable mention for me here. Why
do you have an honorable mention for literally every single email we get on this show?
Because you never know when I never know when my co-host is going to drop the Mavs, and then I gotta carry the show on my back. And
you don't think it would be a big deal if the Mavs? You don't think it would be a big deal if the Mavs made the conference finals?
A big deal? No, they have Luka. It's just
but right now they're a worse team than they're probably the fifth or sixth best team in the conference.
Okay, but.
And then making the conference finals isn't a big deal in that scenario?
I saw what Luka did against the Clippers, and that was without KP. So I see the path, man. I see the path. It's just not that.
But you also saw what happened when KP played, right?
KP is going to be better this year. He is. He's gonna be better.
Okay, dude.
Okay, so the Wolves. Let's just
Okay.
let's talk about the Wolves for 2 seconds. I can see the Wolves making the playoffs. I can, because they have. Okay, the case is basically Karl Towns makes an All NBA team. Looks like a, top 10 talent, entirely possible. Anthony Edwards takes a leap. Played in every game last season as a rookie without a training camp. Looked pretty good. Looks okay in preseason. Just an absolute freak with a high ceiling. I love the Patrick Beverley signing. I like Taurean Prince there. I love Jaden McDaniels. I like the fact that they have Chris Finch as their head coach now, and they're doing a lot of fun stuff on offense. Did Patrick Beverley
qualify as a steal, or is he not quite Bielitsa level?
Well, they traded for him.
Okay,
so it's a different. It's apples and oranges. Yeah, exactly.
I see.
But can I sell you a little bit on the Wolves?
You can't, because they make the play-in or the first round of the playoffs. Whoop-de-doo. Okay, congrats.
That would be a stunner, I think. If they actually make the playoffs. If it's a
stunner that your team makes the playoffs, what are we doing here? Then cool, man, cool.
So, okay, then you're not gonna like the bomb I'm about to drop.
Oh God, this is gonna be absurd. I would just like to point out real quick before you drop this quote unquote bomb on me.
Yes.
That we had a meeting for a perhaps special thing in the works that may or may not be happening soon. We had a meeting about it this week, and everyone in the meeting got mad at me because they claimed I was going to have takes that pissed everyone off. And I think that that's a claim not based in reality. I'm not here to make people angry, when in fact you actually come in with the fire. So let's see what you got. What's this bomb you're about to drop?
My fire is backed in just years of experience and knowledge covering the NBA. I want to say that real quick as the caveat. My team that I think could be a shocker this year. But
before you name the team, tell me what you think they're going to do.
Make the playoffs.
That's it?
The Knicks were cited in this question, correct?
Right.
The Knicks were the 4 seed. They made the playoffs. They lost in 5 games. The Knicks were an absolute revelation last year. Do you disagree with that?
Okay. All right. No, let's hear it. Let's hear this bomb.
So my team along those lines
you put a lot of masala on it, so you got to deliver. That's all I'm going to say.
The Sacramento Kings.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah. So I don't know if you follow the Sacramento Kings on Instagram. I just want to shout out their social media.
They're posting, baby. They are posting.
It's LeBron. It's LeBron of NBA social media teams.
Yes, agreed. Shout out to Kings social media.
Yes. So their obsession with Davion Mitchell, incoming rookie, it's just in his work ethic. I just feel like he's going to be he's going to have the third year of Dwayne Wade's career as a rookie. That's just what I'm feeling right now with Davion Mitchell.
Keep Dwayne Wade's name out of your mouth, but continue.
There's some rookie of the year potential here. I feel like they have, when you look at their roster, they have 8 solid to very good NBA players, and that does not include Marvin Bagley, who I personally have not 100% given up on yet.
I love Marvin Bagley. Can I tell you about my affinity for Marvin Bagley?
Very quickly.
I had him on a user created NBA 2K draft class.
Okay.
And I drafted him to my team in NBA 2K, and he was my small ball 5, and he was just an awesome pick and roll partner for Paul George. And yeah, I love Marvin Bagley. He's dope, man. I also think he has what it takes to succeed in the NBA. He just needs to find the right role.
So, yeah, and I don't know what that role is. I think he's obviously hyper talented. There's a reason. I don't think
some culture.
Sure. I don't. I don't think that there was some lineup data with him last year where when he was with like other starters that the Kings were pretty good. Now the
I mean,
Kings also
his rookie year, he was playing really well with Fox and Hield when he was healthy. So
he just gets hurt. He gets hurt
yeah.
all the time. So Marvin Bagley's not the reason why I'm high on them. Like I think that Fox is a star. Fox started to hit like step back threes last season, and if it gets a little tricky here when you try to like say that he's as good as Donovan Mitchell or as good as Jamal Murray because like honestly, if you switch the situation, I don't know if he would be producing at that level, but I think he could. So I just have always been a fan of him and kind of his maturation as a franchise level point guard. Buddy Hield, obviously, they still have, who's one of the best 3-point shooters in NBA history. You have Harrison Barnes, who they did not trade last year at the deadline, who is a very just like a lot of solid names,
incredibly steady guys.
Roster.
I mean, Richaun Holmes. I mean, we talked about this when we were doing our top 100 pods. How many Kings guys we wanted to sneak in there? I agree. They have a really talented team. I love De'Aaron Fox. I love how fast he is.
He is fast.
He is someone who stands out in a ubiquitous NBA. Just the way he plays is a lot of fun. That's actually a really good pick, Michael. I thought about the Kings, but
wow, thank you. I'm honored.
No, I did. I just was so caught up in like the Hawks making that conference finals run that I was trying to think of something along those lines. But I do think the Kings making it into the playoffs would be awesome. Them winning a game or two in the first round would be huge for them. I'd love to see it happen. I mean, they have the longest playoff drought in the league right now. I think De'Aaron Fox is someone who I'd love to see in a playoff series. I think he would be a lot of fun. So it's tough because I think a lot of people are not sure if Luke Walton's the right coach for that team.
He's probably the only coach on the hot seat coming into the season. I'm just saying that off the top of my head that I can think of.
until Mike Budenholzer plays Giannis 35 minutes in a round one game. And the Kings, you mentioned they didn't trade away Bagley, Hield, or Barnes. It also worries me a little bit how often they're putting those talented players in trade proposals or rumors, etc., when it feels like they should have a more – their team is less talented than the sum of its parts somehow because they have really talented parts, but they haven't found a way to, blend them all together yet.
Right. I mean, there were stretches last year, and we haven't even named or mentioned Halliburton, who, if he goes up a level or just improves marginally and is able to stay healthy also, like this is just a really like dynamic basketball team, like smart. They have a lot of really good passers. I like them. They can play a lot of different ways. Yeah. I actually like the Tristan Thompson addition just for like depth purposes.
Yeah.
And if you just play Tristan as a backup center who, goes 15 minutes a night, 18 minutes a night.
Yeah.
Great. That's wonderful for him. That's perfect.
When you're not starting him next to a second big, he can become a lot more effective.
Yes, I have PTSD from what you just described. Okay, so are there any teams that you can see just maybe not even going on a Hawks-esque run, but just being like, I don't know, like just looking at consensus, I guess, and just being better than whatever it is that, maybe Vegas's over-under lines or something like that, where it's just, oh my God, this team is like the Raptors or...
I do think I am a fan of the Raptors, and I think it's going to come down a lot to, we had Chris Mannix spoke to anonymous scouts around the league who gave their takes on a bunch of teams, and I highly recommend everyone go read that piece because it's hilarious. I believe one scout called Colin Sexton an asshole.
I did tweet that, yes.
Yeah, hilarious.
Really interesting thing to say about somebody.
Really uncomfortable. But, they mentioned for the Raptors it's going to come down to Siakam and how different of a player he's been practically since the bubble started. But, I will say a lot of people, this is a transitional year for the Raptors, et cetera. Like, I think they have a really good team. Nick Nurse is an outstanding coach and one of, I think, the best kind of in-game adjusters, game-to-game adjusters in the playoffs. And like they're going to get a huge boost playing in Toronto this year. I mean, they played only road games last year, coming out of the bubble. And I think I love Fred VanVleet. I love Siakam, obviously. I think Dragic is going to be useful if they keep him there. Precious Achiuwa, I think, already looks better. I think the Olympics experience helped him a lot. Like, I think they have a lot of talented guys, and I don't mean to just...
You haven't even named my favorite player on the team.
Who's that?
OG, baby.
OG. I was explaining to a friend the other day. I was like, have you seen the video of Serge Ibaka and OG going shopping? And he was like, no. And I was like, it's one of the greatest NBA texts we have is just Serge Ibaka saying OG over and over again.
The fact that was not nominated for an Academy Award is
agreed.
Just it boggles the mind, and it's frankly offensive.
And so, I'm big on the Raptors. OG, I mean, Gary Trent, I think is going to be really useful there. I think they're going to play great defense, and I think they can scrape by offensively, certainly. And if Siakam, I think, can recapture the form he had before the bubble, kind of, maybe clear up whatever issues he's had with the organization there last year. The fact that they're actually going to get to play in Toronto again, I think that I do wonder if we're sleeping on them a little bit. No one kind of talks about them as a team that could be in the top 6, top 5 of the East, but it wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, I kind of am a little curious as to why people are so down on them, especially when you look at the trade potential. Like, they're a team that could and has proven willing to make a super splashy deal, and they have a lot of really attractive pieces, a lot of attractive contracts. So they're just a team to kind of keep your eye on. And they could go the other way. They could trade Siakam for picks or for young prospects or whatever if things aren't going well. And
I'm ready to talk myself into the Raptors finishing higher than the Heat. I'm very close to talking myself into that.
I think that is possible. I mean, the one of the great you kind of cited the scouts, anonymous scouts takes piece. One of the funniest things that I read in that was about the Heat and how much better is Kyle Lowry really than Goran Dragic. And that's like one of those takes that's like you first you see it and you think it is just so galaxy brained, and then you like take a step back and you're like, this actually there might be some like validity to this. Like if Kyle Lowry's like old, and I love that move, and I'm not going to say anything bad about it, but like if he gets hurt and he's just hurt all year long, I mean the guy takes like 3,500 charges a season. If he has like a back problem or something, I don't know. That's an interesting one.
I mean, let me put it this way. If there was a universe in which they had Lowry and Dragic, I like their offseason a lot more. And to me, it's less about how great Kyle Lowry is and more about, I think, people glossing over how important Dragic was to their formula for success and how much of it was predicated on him playing his best. Now, you mentioned Lowry's injury history. I do think Dragic has had his own, aging concerns the last couple of seasons.
Sure.
I think he was great in the bubble when they weren't traveling and they had the days off, et cetera. Then last year, he was in and out of the lineup.
Finals. And
yes, right. And the Heat obviously win that finals. Dragic and Bam are healthy. It's definitely an interesting conversation because I think the Heat's depth is not good. It's not good. It's going to be a lot of pressure on Max Strus, KZ Okpala, Gabe Vincent, Markieff Morris, and Dwayne Dedmon. Like, it's going to be fascinating what happens if they have even one injury. I mean, their depth scares me a lot, to say the least.
So for my next email that I'm going to read, there's one I have in our outline, Rohan, that I'm going to skip over actually because it's kind of a doozy and we could spend a lot of time on it. And it's also kind of an evergreen thought exercise. So we're gonna couch that one.
Okay, is it the one with the lineups? I don't want to give it away.
It
Okay.
is the one with the
But
lineups.
but shout out
yes.
to that question. It's a
a
really
great
good question. Do we
It's a
want
great
to?
question.
Who sent it in? Who sent it in?
It was sent in by Jonathan. So shout out to you, Jonathan. We're
Jonathan,
gonna get back to this question.
We'll come back to that
sure.
one at some point. It was a very, very good question. Something that I literally was thinking about as my head hit the pillow last night and thinking about it again when I woke up this morning. That's how good of a question that one was, Jonathan.
So I actually wanted to hit this one from Liam, who again is,
Wow. Back to back.
I don't even know what to say about.
He's on his champion God flow right now. Liam right now is LeBron in 2013 holding the finals MVP trophy and the Larry O'Brien trophy, one in each hand, just looking at the camera like
cigar in his mouth. Liam, shout out to you.
Yeah.
So this one it's just a fun little thought exercise that I kind of want to debate, and I did a lot of research for it. So selfish me as the host. That's why we're going in. So Liam writes, looking at every general manager in the league, who do you think is the best drafter? I think this is a very debatable subject since so many GMs have drafted some great players over the years. So this is just obviously a very subjective one because nobody's record is perfect, and especially if you've been in the chair for a very long time, you're going to have some whiffs. But I thought that this was kind of obvious, and I'm curious to see who your answer is on this one, Rohan. And I think we might actually have the same one. I'm anticipating actually having the same one, but no pressure. So why don't you tell me who you picked for this?
So there's three that came to mind, okay?
Okay. In no particular order?
There's one that I think is my favorite, and then there's two who I think are close by that people are going to laugh at me for grouping together.
Give me the two first.
So I think the Heat and Celtics are both really solid drafters. Now, the Celtics get criticized because, they had this big pick strategy that blew up in their face to an extent, and some of their first-round picks have not, I think, fully splashed it in the NBA. I mean, I think people have high hopes for guys like Nesmith and Langford. And having said that, they get high marks just for drafting Tatum and Brown the years that they did. Those were franchise-altering moves, and I think they drafted two cornerstones of what could easily be a title team one day and picked two players when teams were not prepared to pick those two players where they did. And that, to me, I think is a huge kind of feather in the cap for that organization. The Heat, I think, to a similar extent, picking up Bam Adebayo where they did, Tyler Hero as well. And I know that the Hero discourse swings wildly from, the Heat want him to be Devin Booker to this guy's a bust to now Hero's getting killed a little bit this week for saying he wants to be in the conversation with Trae Young, et cetera. But I mean, another problem is you look at it just drafting, but teams who were able to bring in undrafted guys, or to me, that's all under one umbrella. Scouting, finding those guys. I mean, the Heat, they didn't draft them, but bringing in Duncan Robinson, guys like that to an extent, they do a really good job of finding those players.
They have great player development, which makes their drafting look very good.
Exactly. But to me, the number one with a bullet, it's got to be the Denver Nuggets. And Tim Connolly, because
that's why you're the co-host of this show, Rohan.
I mean, to get Murray, MPJ, and Jokic, none of whom were top picks, none of whom were obvious selections. I mean, even Gary Harris, when they picked Gary Harris, was outstanding. And we want to go back to player development. They've brought along, Monte Morris, PJ Dozier. I think has been an interesting guy for them when healthy, and actually getting minutes. So they're drafting and player development. It's easy to say, why don't more small market teams try to operate like the Nuggets? I think Tim Connolly would admit to you, he's admitted to me that they got lucky when they picked Jokic where they did. But I mean, to sign three guys of their caliber and all of them deservingly getting max contracts in Porter Jr., Murray, and Jokic, to me, they're the runaway winners.
So Tim Connolly was my number one as well. And My other two that I had, I didn't want to pick Danny Ainge because I just, you kind of laid out, and it was very big of you to lay out the argument that I would have made.
I mean, that one is an interesting one because I do think the people who would argue against have an interesting argument, but at the end of the day,
there's been some whiffs. There's been some whiffs.
But at the end of the day, to hit on Tatum the year they hit on Tatum when everyone was talking about Fultz and Lonzo, as well as Jaylen Brown when they picked him out of Cal, I think most people hadn't heard of him. So, I mean, those are massive. And I think that's what's funny about drafting is like the whiffs can set you back, but finding a Tatum makes them worth it, right?
They would be in the wilderness if they drafted Markelle Fultz.
Yeah.
Like they would be, I don't even know where they would be right now. Jaylen Brown would be their franchise guy, and they'd probably be trying to trade him right now. I honestly don't even know where they would be. So yeah, and then I did have the Heat here because you kind of already laid out that argument well. Travis Schlenk is another GM who has, made some forget about I guess the trade is everything. Luka, Trey, and taking Cam Reddish with that pick, trading up for DeAndre Hunter, who looks like he's going to be really good. But then I give credit. I give credit to someone who drafts John Collins. Those are the picks where it's okay, you really did a great job here. Because I think anybody could have told you that Trae Young was going to be awesome, and obviously Luka is going to be awesome. But you could have messed up. You could have been the Kings. You could have done a lot of different things in that draft. But okay, I want to really go over Tim Connolly's draft record here because it has extreme highs, and then it has just what is happening. Oh, when you look back at it,
there's the Trey Lyles fiasco.
Yes, we're going to get to that in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So, obviously, his first pick that he ever had was Rudy Gobert, and he trades Rudy Gobert with to the Utah Jazz for cash, which is just anyone who follows the NBA is familiar with that one, which was tough. You mentioned then he picks in the next year, 2014 draft, takes Jokic 41st overall, trades Doug McDermott to Chicago for Yusuf Nurkic and Gary Harris, which is just a great deal kind of in the moment. 2015, he takes Emmanuel Mudiay. I should say the Nuggets because it's a group decision and it's a whole front office deal. But they take Emmanuel Mudiay when Devin Booker was on the board. And you can do this for a lot of teams. A lot of teams missed on Devin Booker. But then in 2016, you get Jamal Murray 7th when, I kind of you want to give credit to that, and I do give credit, but some of it is just the Kings taking, or whoever took, Buddy Hield ahead, and some of the other players who were picked ahead just are out of the league right now. But they got Jamal Murray. They took Juancho Hernan-Gomez 15th. He's now a Celtic. Great. Malik Beasley 19th, who is on a big contract in Minnesota. So all those guys are still in the league. That just tells you kind of your ability
Juancho's a good player for them
talent.
when he was healthy. Same for Malik Beasley. Yeah.
So that brings us to 2017. You get Monte Morris with the 51st pick, which was a dynamite. That's just a dynamite selection right there. You have the I'm blanking on what exact number overall.
Was it 12 or 13? I think it was right around there.
Yeah. And you instead of taking Donovan Mitchell, who was there, and you could have some positional overlap there with him and Murray, etc.
And who knows if that would have worked out. Time, right?
Exactly. But they trade that pick for Tyler Lydon and Trey Lyles, which it's tough. It's really tough going back and looking on things.
And especially because they ended up signing Millsap in free agency that year, making Lyles, almost immediately obsolete because they had a better power forward to play next to Jokic, and that was a tough one. And Lyles was good for them that first year. I mean, he had his moments. He fit in there, but that's a very tough one.
Very tough. And the next year, as you said, MPJ at 14. I always think about the Clippers and what they did in this draft, and it would just traumatize me if I was a Clippers fan. Like your team is a title contender, that's wonderful, but you could have had Shea and Michael Porter Jr. It's just, and you would have one of them right now, most likely after the Paul George trade too. So that's just a real tough one for the Clips, but. Michael Porter Jr. just signs a $207 million, not all of it's guaranteed, but a lot of it is, $1 million contract extension, and looks good. He looks like he's going to be a pretty good player for years to come. Not perfect, but just a genius scorer and can hit tough shots, and we've talked about him and his flaws and his strengths over and over again. But that's obviously a risky pick, and it's panned out for them in huge ways. In 2019, then they trade their first for Jeremy Grant, so that's just good value allocation, I guess, because Jeremy Grant was big for them, and they could have won the title that year in the bubble. So yeah, I'm not surprised that we both ended up on Connolly, because you've talked a lot about Tim Connolly's draft record. Glowingly, and I just wanted to shout it out and appreciate it.
Yeah,
because,
I mean,
you run the gamut there from it. Just kind of it shows how difficult drafting is, and even if you get a Jokic and you get an MPJ and you get a Murray, like you could have also had. I know I understand like it doesn't work out that way, but Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, etc. It's a fascinating whole way to build a basketball
It's
team.
always going to be imperfect. Every single team has a massive whiff. Every single team has a massive whiff. No team gets it right every time. And I think that's why it's also important to point out that it really is not just drafting. It's what's your entire player development system like? Are you finding players who are undrafted? Are you finding guys in the G League? Are you able to bring along the players you draft? Are you just banking on their talent, or are you able to develop them, et cetera? So, there's so much that goes into it. It's a great question, but I also think it's important to point out, like drafting is really just only one part of it. So much of it is also just what do you do once you have the guy? Can you, highlight their skills, et cetera? I don't know if Duncan Robinson turns into the player he is unless he has Spo, who seems to have, kind of that special connection with him. And that's not to say other coaches wouldn't have recognized it, et cetera. It just really takes like a perfect environment for so many of these situations to blossom. So it really is, it's crazy. Every single team has a crazy whiff. Every single team has a what were you thinking whiff, like that should have been a no-brainer, but just that's how inexact the draft is.
Yeah, and context is everything. Like, I firmly believe in my gut that Bam Adebayo would not have developed into an all-star if he didn't go to the Heat and they didn't put the ball in his hands and they didn't let him run fast breaks and operate from the elbows and average 4.5 assists a game or whatever and play through his mistakes, most importantly, which he's spoken about. So,
and even Bam Adebayo had to sit behind Hassan Whiteside for a year, so...
Yeah, and that speaks to like just the political nature of how much money a guy's making. The Nuggets could have chosen Nurkic because they drafted him higher. Like that's so it's all very fascinating and fun to discuss. But Rohan, I think that brings us to the end of today's
already
episode.
This one just kind of flew by, huh?
It did. It's all credit to the Open Floor Globe.
Yeah.
So keep the emails coming. Openfloormail@gmail.com. It's openfloormail@gmail.com. You guys are all wonderful. We are so excited for the NBA season to actually begin with basketball next week. The preseason is over. Thank you, Lord. And
this has been just one of the worst off seasons I can remember, man. Oh my God. I'm so tired of talking about local ordinance, vaccination statuses, players not reporting, dragged out trade scenarios. I'm just so ready to see them on the court. What's actually going to happen? I'm chuffed, man. I'm chuffed.
On that note, Tuesday is opening night. We're very excited. Until then, everybody, please stay safe. Whoa. Yeah.